All right, guys, my kitchen always seems so organized. If you look now, it's not so much. So we got a lot going on. We're waxing. This is our illustrious waxer. It is a double boiler, stuck together, filled with water, top half wax. We're gonna heat this on low. I mean low. This is gonna need to be heated very slowly. Even with boiling water, wax can hit a flash point. If it hits a flash point, you'll have a massive fire in your kitchen that the only way you're gonna be able to put out is to throw this out in the backyard and let it burn. If you throw water on it, you're gonna burn your whole house down. So you cannot let this sit. If you are waxing a cheese, you must stay with the wax all the time. This is one particular area that I do not refrain from. I will say in other places, if you're doing a culture, if you're doing waiting for coagulation, you got an hour to kill, yeah, you can go to the store and stuff. You don't leave this behind. You stay in the kitchen with it unless you have to use the restroom, and that's the only time you leave it. And if you have an emergency, you turn it off. And if the dog barks, you tell him to stop. Hey, sit down. My apologies. Come here. Alrighty, moving on. So I had 3 gallons of milk left over from, there's still a little bit in there, that somebody had provided to me. It's in the pot. It will be in the pot for probably another hour. I heat this very slowly, usually on like a 3. I have an electric stove, but you basically want this to heat up very slowly. You don't want it to burn to the bottom of the pan, where you're gonna end up introducing burnt milk up into your cheese. And though it won't cause any issues with the cheese, it will still, you'll find bits in it when you go to eat it. You probably don't want that. Still got the brine going on here. As you see, we bleach. This is the very first part of everything, is getting everything out and ready to go. I bleach my cheesecloths. I bleach my draining utility. Even the thermometers get bleached. Everything gets bleached. And when that's done, they will dry. And then we will begin bleaching our molds. Now, I'm a little OCD when it comes to bleaching. You only need 1 cap. 1 cap, not a whole gallon of bleach. Many of you commented that I was submerging my entire hand in bleach before. Nope, 1 cap, that's it. But for the purposes of today, we're just gonna use a large Tom mold. I'm gonna make, somebody requested I make a Havarti. I've made them all the time. I haven't made one in a while, so I'm gonna make one kind of experimental style. Throw a bunch of different spices in there and see what comes of it. So here's a typical mold. You see it's got drainage holes in it. That's where the waste seeps through. And then on top, you have what's called the follower. The follower is what is used to press the way out of the cheese. And with that, you add a press or weight or what have you to extract that. And then when it's done, you end up with that beautiful form that we have right here. So for the purposes of today and getting started, this is what we have. And then our creme de la creme is my wonderfully stocked pile of cultures. So today we're going to use what's called Mesophilic starter culture. And this is the one we need, actually, C101. This is what is typically used for a lot of your normal cheeses, like the Havartis, cheddars, Gouda, your standard table type cheeses that you might find in an everyday store. C101 can pretty much make every single one of those. So from a buying perspective, you want to have a lot of C101, unless you're going to get into more advanced cheeses, because this is the one that you're probably going to use 99% of the time. Well, let's just say 90, depending upon how much work you put into it. these also must stay in the freezer. And they usually have a good shelf life, probably 6 months to a year. But they must stay in the freezer to keep the bacteria from waking up and dying, basically. So that's pretty much what we're doing today. Oh, another funny thing about cheese, a lot of people don't think, back to the mold video, most people don't realize or don't think about this. When I mention molds on cheeses, people freak out. I mean, they can't get over themselves. But what they don't understand is that milk and the cultures that are added are all bacteria. Most of it is bacteria with the exception of lactose. You have all sorts of good bacteria inside of a milk. And you also have good bacteria that you introduce into the milk to create the process that changes the milk and gives it the curd, forms the cheese. And a lot of people don't realize that. They somehow equate milk to being some sort of just a liquid beverage, like a water. But it's not. It's actually a fully living organism in and of itself. So just a little fun fact of the day. I'll be back later. I got some stuff to do when it comes to adding the culture, and we'll add a quick one on that. Bye. All right, people, back again. We poured the milk. Now we've heated the milk. I like to explain to people, when we heat the milk, as you see, I'm using an electric burner. The target temperature for this is going to be 86 degrees. So what we have here currently, you can see that we're at 86 now, 86.4, 86.2, right around the right temperature we need to be. Now, what I do typically for the purposes of heating the milk is I get to about 84 and then I shut the heat off completely. Because shutting the heat off will allow the milk to maintain the temperature at 86 because the burner down here is still warm. So if you shut it off, say 82, 83 degrees, the residual heat from the burner will still continue to increase the heat a little bit. You'll actually get to about 86, 88, which is fine. But that extra couple of degrees will help keep your milk at the right temperature while you're trying to stabilize your culture, which is the next step. So what we typically do is we stir this a few times while it's heating because we want to make sure we've got a little bit of circulation going here. And then we get the culture, okay? So again, we're using a mesophilic culture. Okay, these packs. This one comes with 5 packs. Still got one left in there. Got to order some more. And you see, they last for quite a while. The sell-by date on this one is 3/25, or best by date is 3/25. I bought these about 2 months ago. So, I mean, they last like close to a year. Some of them were more than a year, 6 months to a year, I guess. So what we want to do with this is, it's fairly simple. Cut the top. What's important with adding culture is that you want to do it very lightly and you want to spread it around the milk. What you want to see is, you want to see a light powder. You do not want to see clumps. So it's kind of hard to see here because my pot is so large and the hood is in the way. But I'll kind of show you what we're going to do here. We're just going to lightly, you probably won't even see it too much come out because it's so fine. So we're just going to sprinkle this. You see the milk is moving still from when I stirred it. And it's important to stir it before you put it in because the milk, it keeps the milk moving. And what you want to do is you want to have this culture be able to rehydrate into the milk. And for that purpose, we place the culture in the milk. You can kind of see little bits of it in there. There's some right there floating around. But you don't want to dump it directly in, because if you dump it directly in to the pot and you get little piles of it that hit the milk, they will, snowball together in clumps. And you don't want that to happen, because if that happens, your cheese just isn't going to turn out. because all those bacteria will form together and they may not be able to activate the way they need to. So what we're going to do with this is we're going to tell Alexa, set timer for 2 minutes. Alexa, set timer for 2 minutes.
Good morning, Dave. 2 minutes, starting now.
She doesn't listen so well all the time. She's gotten a little bit stubborn and hard of hearing in her old age. You can see now, we're still working on this. It's been about, I don't know, 30 minutes now, and it hasn't done anything at all. So when this timer goes off in 2 minutes, all we're gonna do is give it a couple of quick stirs, and we're gonna put that lid back on there, and it will sit for 45 minutes untouched with no heat, and it's fine. The pot, and again, the burner here will retain residual heat. Now, some of you probably have gas stoves, and that's a little trickier. So if you have a gas stove, you may be more inclined to keep your heat very low, and keep stirring it, because the gas burners don't have as wide as a range as the electric ones, so the heat is more directed toward the center of a large pot, and you kind of don't want that. So if you can get away with it somehow, now this is a giant pot, you would probably want to use a water bath of some sort, and what that would be is kind of like a double, how do you call these things? The double boiler situation, where you have a pot with water in it, and then you have another pot with your milk in it. And unfortunately, I personally have found that is completely unsustainable when you're dealing with 4 and 8 gallon batches of cheese at a time. If you're doing a single cheese, like a single pound of a cheddar or something, that's totally fine. I'm sure you can get away with it. But what you're going to have to do is probably with the heat is you're going to want to experiment. You're definitely going to want to experiment with the heat, and you always keep it low. This is one of the reasons why cheese making takes such a long time, is because you can't force anything. You cannot force the heat. Alexa, stop. You cannot force the heat on the cheese. If you heat the cheese too quickly and accelerate the bacteria too quickly, it's going to cause you all kinds of problems in your cheese. You're going to have hard curds. You're going to have possibly no whey discharge, which means no consolidation whatsoever. So you really got to take it slow and low when it comes to making the cheese. So we're just going to give this just a few stirs. And when stirring, you want to do up and down, not round and round. Whirlpools are not good. You want to have that bacteria rolling all through that milk. So you want to do a pull on your ladle. You want to pull it up and down to get that mixed in really well. And then we put the lid on, and we say, Alexa, set timer for 45 minutes. Something else you can do, if you do heat with a gas burner, and you have a grate and you don't have that big element underneath of it, is what I do is, and you're going to need this technique for other type of cheeses regardless excuse me, of whether you're heating them or not. You just get a big towel and wrap it around the pot, and that'll keep it warm. And a lot of cheeses you may have to sit in a pot, either in the middle of the cooking, or even when you're doing the a secondary cook. And there's also cases where you at the end you may have to leave the cheese sit in its own way for a couple of hours at a specific temperature, say 100 degrees. And the best way to do that is to get your temperature up to the way at 100, and then just wrap that thing with like beach towels to keep that heat in there. The next step in 45 minutes is going to be adding the rennet, and I'll come back and we'll do that. And then we have to wait another 45 minutes, and then we're going to cut the cheese, and I'll show you how we do that. We'll go from there. Bye, guys. All right, people, we are back. Aside from the cheese making, we're getting back to the waxing. So the wax is ready. As you can see, it's ready. And I'm using a Purdy 3-inch brush here. If for the process of this process, we are basically just going to paint the cheese. I mean, that's all there is to it. So we just take the brush, hold it over, and we paint. And we want to paint until there's nothing coming through the wax. It's going to take a little bit of time. And you're probably going to make a mess. So get used to it. This is what we're gonna have, and we're gonna let this cool. There's no real sense in continuing to record this video. It's just kind of, you know, you just paint the wax on there, set it on a piece of foil, like so. You know, it's like cool for maybe 5 minutes. I mean, it's already cool enough to touch, to handle. And then you wanna flip over and repeat the process. When you've got the top, the bottom, and you'll just run on the sides. I basically pull up and let the cheese rotate around, like so. You just want to keep going around until you don't see any more of that cheese. Make sure you fill in all those holes. See, I got a couple little holes right there. You want to make sure you get all those because you don't want to allow the mold to penetrate the wax. You need to, I'm doing this fairly quickly because I do it often, but you really want to make sure that you get the whole cheese done. It's not so important on the first round because I'm going to put a second coat on this, but you do want to do your best to get it as much as you can on the first round. And that's pretty much it. And you're all waxed up. What we'll do with this one is now we'll just let this cool.
This might answer your question.
Alexa,
What is the
stop.
first
I don't even know. She does it all the time. She loves to talk to me for some reason. It's a thing of hers. So as you can see, cheese is well waxed, but we're gonna let it cool, and I like to put a second coat on there because of the to get it thick. Thanks. All right, people, it has been 45 minutes. Timer's off. This bad boy is ready to go. Another quick note about the waxing. Because the wax can be a little pliable, you may just want to get a piece of foil. I always rest mine on a piece of foil. But to put it on the counter so that you don't damage the wax because it's still pliable, you want to take a piece of foil like such. You just lay the cheese on there, grab it from both sides, and then you gently lay it down like so. And that'll prevent you from slamming like the corner of these of the wax into the countertop and creating a crevice or a hole for the cheese to be vulnerable. All right, so 2 things I want to mention to start out. This batch of milk is using raw milk. It's all raw milk, okay? For the purposes of raw milk, you don't really require calcium chloride. If you're using bottled milk, you want to use calcium chloride. Calcium chloride is a natural compound within milk. And during pasteurization and homogenization, a lot of that compound, that calcium chloride, is removed from the process. And it's as important to note that you need this because when you go to coagulate the milk, part of the process of the coagulation with the rennet is the calcium chloride binding to the rennet. Rennet needs to bind to calcium chloride to aid in coagulation. So though you could miss it and forget it, but if you did, you would have to pay more time to the coagulation process, and you would probably have to extend your coagulation period when adding rennet. Sometimes you can forget. I've done it many a times. I forget to put it in there and I can't figure out why is it taking so long to get a good curd set. And then boom, it's because I may have forgotten to add this. And typically, again, you only really need this when you're working with pasteurized milk because it removes most of it from the actual milk during the process. The other part of this is annatto. I use this on occasion with Cheshire and a cheese that calls for it. It's really not necessary for anything. It is a color made from the annatto tree, and it's a natural coloring. And what one would do is you basically, you would take a cup of milk from your batch right after this process occurs. So these 2 processes, adding calcium chloride and adding your annatto, happen during your culture rest phase. So you add your culture, wait a few minutes, and then you would add the predetermined amount of this. It really doesn't matter what you put in there. You really only need a few drops though, because the milk will actually darken even after a few drops. But it's important when you add this to your milk that you take a cup out, you add whatever the recommended dosage of this is to your milk, and then you stir it up, and then you reintroduce it into the cheese. Pouring this directly into the cheese will basically spot any culture that may be residual on the surface, and then you'll end up with these little weird orange bits all through your cheese. So if you want a nice uniform color cheese, you'll wait a little bit after your culture has hydrated and it's mixed in well and it's been sitting for a little bit, and you will dilute it with regular milk beforehand and then reintroduce it back in. Calcium chloride, that also has to go in during the culture phase. Again, if you forget it, you're just probably looking at a little extra time, probably maybe another half hour to coagulate. But you need to make sure that if you did forget it and you're not seeing the curd that you need, that you make sure you take the time to think about the reason why and adjust for it. is if you take that curd when it's too soft and you try and run it into, let's say you cut it and then you have the cook and you pour it into a strainer, then if you don't use cheesecloth, or you have a cheesecloth with more of an open mesh, your curd will likely go right on through it, and then you'll have wasted, what, we're into this 2 hours now. You'll probably wasted by then 4 or 5 hours of your time, and then you'll have nothing to show for it. So we've done that. So for the next process of the step, we need to add rennet. Okay, there's different ways of adding it. Some people say you can do like the annatto, where you get a cup of clean water. You don't want to use well water. You don't want to use water from your sink. You would want to have either a jug of fresh spring water from wherever, Walmart, or either have boiled the water or have had water that you've allowed to sit overnight, to allow it to, for the chemicals to dissipate. And that's only for chlorine. I don't recommend using the well water at all. You should always stick with clean filtered water. And what you would do with that is you would, I'll get to stop here. You would take this is actually vegetable rennet here. This is made from a plant, and I can't remember everything. I forgot the name of the plant, but y'all can look it up. Typical animal rennet is formed from the stomach of the animal. So, I think I may have mentioned this before, but quick lesson on cheese history. Cheese was invented by people thousands of years ago using animal stomachs to carry milk, nomadic tribes to carry milk from site to site when they were moving in search of food. And then we get to the other end, and they would open the stomach lining that they used to carry the milk, and they would see it was all clumped together. And that is because of rennet, which is lined inside of the animal's stomach wall, and that is what causes the cheese to coagulate. For the purpose of this, we need half a teaspoon, and I don't have my half a teaspoon, so I gotta find one. I'm not gonna look everywhere for it. It's a junkie drawer. So this one calls for, I think it was 2.8 milliliters. If you aren't great on calculations, I suggest you invest in an Amazon or have your computer or smartphone ready. 2.8 milliliters is probably about a half a teaspoon, give or take. And because we're working with raw milk, we want to use a little bit less. One thing I had failed to mention previously is that depending upon the type of milk you use is also going to be dependent upon the amount of culture and rennet that you are using. You can pretty much assume that if you're working with a pasteurized milk, you're going to use usually 30% less in the way of rennet and culture, because the cultures that are available in raw milk that are still available, whereas a lot of them have been killed or stripped away during the pasteurization process when it goes to a milk plant. So adding that extra culture for the pasteurized milk is kind of a necessity. Not so much with the raw milk, because you're dealing with something that hasn't been tainted or altered in any way. So like I said, you can either add your half a teaspoon to 1 cup of clear spring water, no well water, no water with chlorine. So boil it or use water from the store that is natural spring water. Me, I put as a 1/4 teaspoon. I can't find my half. We're just gonna dump it in there. pour it in. And we pour again. And we don't want to agitate the milk too much, but we need to get that rennet through there. So again, kind of like with the culture, we're just going to do maybe like 5 or 6 up and down kind of strokes. And you want to move it back and forth, so switch the angle of your stir. And then we'll sit this, and then we sit again. Again, these 2 times, culture, rennet. Need to go to the store, in between, do it during the culture. Need to go to the store, in between, do it during the rennet. Because anytime before that, and anytime after that, you're likely going to be busy for the entirety of the cheese making process. Alexa, set timer for 45 minutes. And that's it. We'll come back when this is coagulated, and we'll show you the cut. All right, people, we are back for the cut. I'm going to go through the cut process, and following that, there is a cook. But that process in and of itself is going to take off and on probably about an hour. So I'm not going to really get into making a video with that. I'll explain to you what needs to be done. But there's no sense in me showing you a video of me stirring something for pretty much an hour is what's going to be happening, with some additional steps happening in between. All right. So, just crack this thing open here. All right. Now it looks like the milk is done. It appears to me visually. But what we need to do is 2 things. In order to check for the curd consistency, there's 2 ways to check. One is your finger. You should be able to put your finger on there and come out, and you shouldn't have any chunks. A little bit of the way is fine. That's one way to tell before you cut. Okay, the next way to tell is to take your spatula, and what you would do is, let's see if I can get this in there so you can see it. You'll take your spatula and you'll pull in and you'll flip it up and out. Just kind of push it in there a little bit, turn it up. You see how that separates like that? Now you have a nice split right in there, and nothing is sticking to the ladle. That's how you know. That's how you know it's ready. So what we're going to do now is we're going to cut this into a 3/8 inch checkerboard pattern. Now I don't have a curd cutter, so I use this. Now, a curd cutter is basically, I had made one at one time. I never bought one. I had an old square ring. I can't remember what it was for that I used, and I bought picture wire. If you can get stainless picture wire, you can make one. What it is you have a stainless square like so, okay? And then you run your picture wire, or let's just say this is what the curd cutter looks like. You'll have a top set that goes horizontally, and there'll be wire running this way, halfway down the set. And then on the bottom, you have it so that it's running vertically. So you have 2 different patterns. And what you do with that is you place that into the cheese, and then you would twist it. And what it would do is it would make a horizontal cut across the top, and then it makes a vertical cut on the bottom half. Then you take that and you flip it over, and you place the horizontal side on the bottom and the vertical side on the top, and that cuts you cubes. I don't have that. I work with the ladle. It does just fine for me. So what we want to do is the following. You basically, trying to get you in there so you can see, you just want to make cuts. These cuts aren't going to be perfect. For the purpose of this, they're to be about a 1/2 inch to 3/8 of an inch. It's never going to be perfect, so don't kill yourself over it. Okay, the idea is to create a balance of separated curds for the cheese making process. And the curd sizes, you want to get as close to possible as you can, because the curd size really dictates how much moisture the cheese will retain or lose. As you can see, I'm cutting this. Sorry, can't get in there. And you can see already that the whey is already separating from the curds. And this is because the curds are releasing the whey, and after they're cut, because the rennet has already taken over the process of coagulating the cheese, these will actually heal themselves. But the first process here, obviously, is to get these things cut. Now we get to my best way of creating the horizontal cuts through the cheese itself, and I basically just use an alternating pattern. And all we want to do is separate these very long tubes and make them smaller. So all we're going to do is this, really. At an angle. Then we start on the other side. So you have a nice cut there, and you can see here the whey is being released in the cheese, and the curd is a good form, because as I separate it, you see it has its own, each curd has its own little form, and that's what you want. You want these curds to have a little bit of form when you cut them. And now what we need to do is we need to let these heal for about 5 minutes, and then once the curd is healed, we are going to move on with the stir. Now, we're going to stir these for, I believe, like 15 minutes. I'm trying to think of how long it's going to be. So we've got to stir, and then we've got to drain, and then we've got to cook and stir some more. So basically, in the next process, what's going to happen is, let me put you back over here so you can kind of see. So for the next part of the process, we're going to have the stir. We're going to stir this. I didn't set a timer. I'm watching the clock. In about 3 more minutes, we'll start stirring this. And we're gonna do an up and down with this, probably for like 15 minutes. And you don't want to stir it too much. You don't want to break it into crumbs, unless it specifically says in the instructions that the curd needs to be broken down into what they call barley or grain size, which are very tiny, rice size. This is not the case with this cheese. We want to try and retain about that size. You're going to see a bunch of smaller pieces in there, and that's totally fine. But what you don't want to do is break it down too much. If you break it down too much for this particular cheese, you're going to dry it out. And we don't want this cheese to be dried out. If we were working with a cheddar or a Cheshire or something, we'd want these smaller curds. With the Cheshire, you want basically size of rice is what you want. So in the meantime, we're gonna, in 5 minutes, we'll stir this for 15. I've got a pot of water here that came from a bottle of purified water I have in the other room. And we're gonna heat this up. We're gonna heat up to about 150 degrees. About 150 is what we're gonna do. But then what we need to do after we stir is we're gonna have to remove about 1/3 of this whey from this pot. And pouring it is not an option. I mean, I've got 4 gallons of milk in here. Pouring it, you just can't. It's just too much of a hot mess to do. So what you do is, you can use something like this. It's a colander. I have another one that's smaller that I will probably use. I have to done here. It's this one. So what we're going to do with this is we're going to clean it up, or it's already clean, but we're going to bleach it and wipe it down. And we set this in here like so, okay? And we're going to, because of the mass that we have, as you see here, we've got there's a lot of curd in there, see? And to be able to get to this whey that's down inside of here, we need to take something like this and we push it down into there, and that keeps the curd from coming up into the whey. And as we push that down in there, we will take our measuring cup, and basically we will push this down on the inside, funnel the fluid up into here while keeping the curds at bay on the outside. And then we will take this and we will draw the whey from the top, okay? The whey should not go in your sink. Don't ever pour whey down your sink. Don't ever pour yeast down your sink. If you pour any of those down in your sink and you have a septic tank, as I do, it will create a bacterial imbalance. You will introduce way too much bacteria into your septic system. Now, originally you may do this and it might be fine, but if you continue this process, say you're a homesteader or you're at home and you make a lot of breads and sourdoughs and your own beers or whatever it is you do, or cheese, and you continuously introduce this into your septic system, you're going to have a massive like bubbly backflow, if you will, because that bacteria will sit in there and it will consume whatever's in there, including the waste from your toilets, and it will just grow and grow until it backflows, basically a bubble deluge back up through your septic pipe system into your house, and you don't want to do that. So when you're done with this whey, you pour it in your garden, give it to your chickens, I don't know, whatever you want to do with it. Drink it if you want to, I don't even care. Make ricotta out of it. You can do whatever you want with it. But do not pour it in the sink. Do not pour it in your toilet. Just get rid of it somewhere else, okay? So what we're gonna do here is, like I said, when we are finished with the stir, which I'm gonna start now, and again, I will show you. Oops, sorry people. I will show you. Very simple. We're just gonna take this and just have an up and down. Just kind of want to keep it moving. That's what we want to do. You're gonna have curd breakage. It's gonna happen. You can't deny that. You can't stop that. You also don't want curds that are too big. You can see right now that most of them are pretty much the same size. You got a couple here that I missed. You see, this is what the curd cutter is for, is to take and cut these into smaller pieces. Okay, and that's what you really want. You don't want to pulverize it. You just want to kind of look through it and make sure everything you have is about the same size. So what we're gonna do next is, again, we'll stir this for 15 minutes, okay? We will remove 1/3 of the whey from here, and we will introduce 130-degree water, and we will do that over a period of 15 minutes. And in that 15 minutes, we will be stirring with that up and down motion that I showed you. And then at the end of that 15 minutes, we will stir for another 15 minutes. And after that period of time, sorry, 30 minutes, not 15, 30 minutes, I was wrong. So 15 on the regular stir, 30 on this. And then afterwards, we will end up draining this out and putting a little bit of salt in here first and then draining it out. And then we will move on to the next step, which is going to be moving into the processing of the cheese, where we move it out to drain and press and all that such. So I'll get back to you shortly on that one. And so stay tuned. I'll be right back. Sorry guys, back again real quick to piggyback off the cooking piece. I do believe, I talk so much, I do believe I failed to tell you that I'm heating this water to 150. And the idea is after the stir for 15 minutes, we're gonna introduce this 150-degree water for the next 15 minutes, slowly. after we had removed a third of the whey. This is going to cook the curd. And what we're going to do is bring the temperature of this milk back up to 130 degrees. From there, we'll add 1.5 ounces of salt, and then we'll stir for another 30 minutes, and then we'll move into the processing of the cheese, moving into the draining and the pressing. Thanks. You know what, people? I'm back. How could I not show you the step? Here I said I'm not going to show you the step. I don't know why I'm wasting all my time not showing you the step. I've stirred the cheese. It hasn't been done anything but sit there for 15 minutes. Now we have the colander, and what we're going to do now is we are going to drain a third of that whey, and we're going to reintroduce our water here. It's sitting at about 150. And we're going to cook it, basically. Actually, you would call this kind of like a scald. When you cook a cheese, you typically would heat it up on a burner, and you would introduce heat very slowly and stir it. That's a cook. This is more of a scald, and anything where you scald something is where you remove whey and introduce really hot water into the whey to kind of shock it into sealing those curds permanently. So what we're going to do, I'm going to take this, we're just going to stick it in there like so. Let me show you what we got going on here. As you see, there she sits. And that's pretty simple. You'll see that sinking. And we, if you guys can see that, are just going to take and push this down to here. And we're going to start taking the whey out. Oops. I didn't mean to do that, actually. You saw me do something that I told you absolutely should never do. And you should not. Trust me. A little sidetracked by trying to film and drain at the same time. Get a bowl, like so. Okay. And you're just going to leave that colander in there and just remove the whey. You're gonna have to kind of eyeball what you think a third is. If you think of the liquid volume, just kind of think about how much liquid a third by the eye would look like. I have gallon markers in here, so if I have 4 gallons, I'll typically try and take out, about a gallon or so. It's not a perfect science with this, but you need to get some of that whey out of there so that when it comes to cooking, you have removed enough whey that you have enough area available to you to scald the curds without having too much whey present. Having too much surrounding whey present will prohibit you from being able to set a proper scald on the skin of the curd, and that will affect your cheese in the end. All right, so I got a fair amount out here. I don't have any space left. I got about a gallon, 3/4 of a gallon of the whey out from the cheese. Okay, so we're gonna take this out, put it in the pan over there, and just give it another little stir here. It's kind of, you see, she's starting to come together a little bit, and that's what you want. You want to see these curds holding a nice form, but you don't want them to mat together. Matting is where they stick, and a curd shouldn't mat unless the instructions specifically call for you to go through the process of matting them. Otherwise, most of the time, curds should not be allowed to mat together. And if they do mat, it's because your curd is too moist. And some cheeses require that because their table cheeses are fresher. They're not meant to dry out. But for the purpose of this one, this Havarti we're making, we're aging this, so we don't want anything matting together. You see, the matting is where it all kind of sticks together like a glue. All right, so we've got our water. I think y'all can see that. Pop this out here. And we're going to introduce this slowly. I'll probably cut the video after I kind of show you this for a hot second. But we've got, you know, almost a full pot of water here. About the same amount that we took out from the whey. And we're going to reintroduce it in little spurts. So we'll just do about a third of it each time. And then what we want to do is we want to continue to cook this. Now what this is going to do, this hot water here, is it's going to seal the skin. You see there's more whey coming out. The scalding forces the whey from the cheese rather than us pushing it out with the spoon, which allows us to retain a good outside curd on the cheese itself. And that's what we want. We want to keep a lot of these curds intact. We don't want to make them all look like rice. So adding this scalding water creates two processes. It heats the cheese rapidly and allows it to seal the skin with a firm outside, all while expressing the whey through the continuing processes of you know, the coagulation. And you want to expel the whey through the cheese without damaging as much as possible, because we want to get rid of a lot of that whey. And the amount of whey that you dispel also is important, because depending upon the cheese, less whey expulsion will result in a sweeter cheese, and more whey expulsion will result in a drier cheese, one with less sugar in it, because there's more lactose being converted through the process of heating and drying the curds out and creating a drier cheese. So we're gonna stir this for another 15 minutes. And then I'm gonna add 1.5 tablespoons of salt, and I'm gonna stir it for another 15 minutes. And then I will cut back. I don't think you need to see me add salt to the cheese and spend a half hour waiting here. So I will come back to you when I'm ready to drain and move on from there. Thanks. Bye. All right, people, we are almost done. I started this at 6 this morning. It is 11:15 now, so it's been 5 hours. I know, right? So what we're gonna do is drain the curd into these basins, which are kind of hard to see. And then we're gonna drain the rest, or drain some of the whey into this one. Then we're gonna put the rest into this container here that's sitting inside the sink with the colander and my butter muslin. For the purposes of this, I have a dog that's jumped up on top of me. This is what I use personally. 9 square feet of the high-grade premium quality butter muslin cheesecloth, because it's reusable and rewashable. All right, now comes the heavy lifting. Okay, so we did the stir. You can't see me, can you? Nope. We did the stir. We did the scald, and the last 15 minutes we added 1 ounce and a tablespoon and a half of salt, and we mixed, and now we're going to pour. So what we want to do is get the majority of this out. I'll stop right here and let you guys see that the majority of the curd is in the bottom, because right before, I didn't mention this, right before I did the pour, we always allow the curd to rest for probably about 5 minutes. It gives it a chance to sit at the bottom and separate from the whey. That way when you pour, you don't pour all of your whey into your container. You may lose some. You see in the bottom there, you'll see the cheese curd. All right, so you see we got a full container here. So what we're gonna do now is move over. I'm gonna pour the rest into here. Can't really see. Oh, there we go. Oop. And there that is. If you have any left in there, you just get your spatula. Or your ladle. Just kind of break it out of there. Just scoop it out. If you want, you can test it. People think it's gross. I love cheese curds. Love, 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 love them. Okay, so I decided to dill onion. This is what we're left with here, as you can see. So what I need to do is separate these. Yes, I got a little bit going down in the sink. I mean, that just, it can't be helped, unfortunately. There's not much you can do about it. But for the purpose of this, we want to get the rest of this whey out. So what we can do is just kind of take a spoon, just kind of lift it around for a second to get that whey broken out of there. And let it drain through the rest of this cloth. And when we're done, we end up with something like this. Okay. So now what we're gonna do, I'm winging this because I like a flavored cheese. I'm gonna put like probably 2 tablespoons each of this. Maybe more, I don't know, whatever I feel like, into here. We're gonna mix it up and it goes into the mold. Yeah, you just wanna look at me, don't you? I know you do. Who doesn't? I do. I know I do. Okay. All right, so I'm going with 2. If it doesn't look right, I might go with 3. Dangerous like that. Risque, risque. I think 2 is good on the onion. Just by eye. Stick that in there. Ooh. We're gonna bang this one out. Yeah, we're going all 2 with this too. Yeah. I think 2 and 2 is good. For me anyway. Can you smell it? Sucks to be you. All right, anyway, so try to do this with one hand. What we need to do now, basically, is I'm gonna chop this up, flip it over. You kind of want to get down there because it's gonna start sticking to the butter. There's some on the bottom. So you want to make sure that you can get that part that's sticking down there off the bottom so you can mix these herbs into here. Now, for the purpose of this video, I'm using a ladle. If this is my cheese, and because I really don't want to mess my hands up right now, I'd be putting my fingers all in there because I'm eating it, so I don't care what y'all think. You aren't eating it, I am. So, but for the purposes of making it for other people, this is the preferred method. So, you see we still got some white in there. We should have it mixed pretty well through. You want to make sure you try and get it all through the cheese if possible. Now that you've seen how it's done, I'm going to put this down so I can get at this a little bit more. I think that's gonna work. All right, so here's what we have. That's it. That's what your cheeses look like. You can hear under there. She's still draining. You kind of see the whey coming out there. So next step is we're gonna put you down and we are gonna pop this in the mold. You have it right here. Pull up these sides. It's very simple. And this is what you got. You're gonna have this, okay? You're gonna have this. But I'm gonna leave this here in a second, for a second, because I don't have a container and I need one. I'm gonna go feed my flowers. Be right back. And I'm back. Mold. Cheese. Cheese, meat mold. Well, leave this on the outside. You always want to leave your muslin kind of on the outside here. And try and spread it around again one more time. Even it out a little bit. All right, that's pretty good. And here's what we have. Okay, very simple. Following, you take this mold, place it on the top here, put you down again. Sorry, hate having to move you guys back and forth, but it's the only way to be able to do this. I need two hands most of the time, doing the best I can here. And you want to pull up. You want to hold the follower down and pull up, because what we want to do is remove any slack that's underneath the bottom of that cheese, because if we don't, it'll create creases in the cheese. So once you're confident that you've pulled it all up, as you have here, you take the edges of these, you just fold them on the inside ring of the follower. Like so. Okay. See, we already have more discharge, so we pour that out.
I don't know that.
And then we're gonna get our makeshift press going. It's gonna go over there on the other end temporarily. And I'll take you over there in a second. So let me see if I can get you facing that way so you can see what we'll be doing. All right. So we're gonna pull this over here for now. Set that there. Right, so for the purpose of this cheese, it's pretty light pressing cheese. It only requires 8 pounds of weight for the first hour or so. And then I think it's 16 for 2 hours. And we're gonna flip it every 30 minutes. So after 8 pounds on the cheese, we'll flip it after 30 minutes. Then we'll put 16 on, and then we'll flip it for 30, flip it for 30, flip it for 30, flip it for 30. And then after that, the cheese will have to be placed into a water bath, not a brine, a water bath. So basically just pure spring water at room temperature, and it'll sit there overnight. And that will continue the aging process within the cheese. It'll continue whatever conversion needs to happen between the bacteria and the lactose that's in the cheese to create that buttery, it's almost like a buttery flavor, I think, Havarti, if I think about it. And then the following morning, we'll pull that out and we'll put it in that brine. It's sitting right there, and we'll brine it for a few hours and she'll be ready to go. So let's see if we can get over here. I'll show you if I can. What we got going on here. All right, so here we have the cheese follower, me. I'll place some of these blocks on here for now. And I need 16 pounds. So my blocks are 20, and that's gonna work just fine for me, so I'll just get one of those. All right. And so this is the process, okay? The next thing we want to do is make sure that this doesn't fall over. And so what we're gonna need to do there is, a lot of times I find I need to build a little brace to hold these things up. And I have a small level that I use to make sure that the cheese is level. All right, so using whatever's available to you, first, we check the cheese, okay? And we want that thing to be level because we want a nice consolidated cheese. For the purposes of holding the cheese in place, there are multiple things you can do. Let me just stick this container here, just like so. That'll keep it from going to the left. Who knows what else? Anything you can find, really. there you go. That's it. It'll stay there. It's not going to go anywhere. It's wedged in. But you can do whatever sort of trickery that you need to do to keep that cheese in place. If it starts leaning toward the back, you may just, I don't know, I do put a paper towel back there or something. If it leans to the front, I don't know, just take anything you can find, like so, and block it up somehow so it doesn't lean forward. There's no science involved in that. Like I said, I had a press and it broke, and I get away just fine without it, to be honest with you, so I haven't created one. So again, we're gonna let this sit here, and you can see, if you look, you should be able to see the whey dripping out of there. I also have apparently a fruit fly here, so what you want to do in a case like that, which I'll do shortly, is, you know, you do have flies in the house and what have you. I have to go downstairs and get one, but I'll get a towel, a larger towel, come back, and we'll cover this up to keep anything from getting in there. Nothing is going to get to the cheese, because the cheese is, you know, it's down in that area. But with the way it's coming out of here, we don't want to draw any other critters that we have in the house toward the cheese. So if you look, you can see the whey's dripping out of the bottom there, coming out of those little side holes. So we'll do this for the next half hour, and there's no sense in me boring you over the next 2 hours with the flips. So after the next close to 3 hours or so, I will show you the finished product before we dump it in the cold water solution to sleep for the rest of the night. Thank you guys for watching, and hope you have a great day.